in watercolour terms, cauliflower means all sorts of things, but it generally means a run back or a water bloom. And you probably have already come across these, but just in case you haven't, just going to work through how they can be your enemy, but they can also be your friend. So as I said on the last video, in case you want to go back and watch it, my last video explains how water to pigment ratio can help with your paintings. I'm just going to dampen slightly down here. I'm sticking to an ultramarine blue here, very simple. If your paints don't have names on, it will be the blue that looks quite dark and is almost violet in colour. It's definitely not greeny blue. It doesn't matter if you've got a greeny blue, will work, but I'm using it because it's nice and dark. I'm doing it in tea consistency, and if you go back to the previous video for the watercolour clock, that will explain it. This is see-through. This is, I would say, what most people who are learning use. They just mix the paint up to this consistency, then they put it on straight onto the paper and think, oh, it looks nice and rich, lovely, that's perfect, I don't need any more than that from my sky. It's going to be too dark, or maybe I should add more water because it's looking ever so dark, so maybe a bit more water goes in. This is all common, and don't worry, I've done it myself many times, so we all can end up in this sort of scenario. I'm just going to take that right down to the bottom. Another little tip, if you're doing a landscape, no point in not going to the bottom on some of them if this is going to be dark and green, because blue will work really well with green. So I've now got a lovely wash. It's damp, it's going to do its own thing. As you know, watercolour does well if you leave it alone. Let's just say I'm just talking for a bit, the phone goes, the door goes, I come back and I think I'm just going to mix a little bit of my crimson into this blue because I fancy lavender or a purpley colour at the bottom, or maybe around the clouds, I don't know yet. So I mix up this. While I'm mixing it, it's dried out a bit, so I add a bit more water maybe to make sure it really pushes around. A little bit more pigment, yeah, now I'm liking that. So I'm now going to go back in and I'm going to, I don't know, push it somewhere along here, maybe to suggest there's clouds have got bottoms on them. I'm going to do a future video on clouds. I'm trying to get them to look realistic. So I'm working quite fast here because this is drying really quickly. And then it's just drying out, so I'm going to add more water. This is the sort of thing that happens. You've got a big puddle of paint, you see through it, but you've already got your colour on, so you don't want to put too much on because you think it's going to make it too dark, too strong. So there we go, I've put them on. Okay, I'm looking at my top layer here and this is looking a bit hard, so I'm going to wash my brush out, give it a little dry on the side there, and then I'm going to go in and push it around to get rid of that edge. Oops, it's a bit too much. No, I've been taught not to touch it, so I'm just going to push it a bit more and then leave it alone. Oh dear, there's another hard edge. So you get the idea, you're just throwing water on there, you see something, you think you need to adjust it, so you do. So at that point we're going to stop. This is a really interesting time because when you've done this, sometimes it works. Sometimes you get these amazing cloud effects that actually you could never have painted yourself. We'll see with this one what the end result is like, whether it worked or not. But just to remember, when your wash behind is still damp, so if you put the back of your fingers or hand you can feel it's cool, that is the danger zone for adding more watery paint. Whereas if you look back at the previous video, if you pick up thick sticky paint that's just on the edge of your brush that you've dried off and you drop that in, then you can get some nice deep effects with those colours, because they disperse into the damp wash without showing any blooms. So we'll just pop some deep colour in here. This isn't a particular picture of anything, as you can probably guess. Just going to put that in, but we already know there's loads of water on there, isn't there, because I put it on there. So let's pick an area that hasn't got any, and let's just, oops, a bit too much red there, just these honey type sticky bits of paint going on, and then we'll leave that alone to do its thing. It's got a really nice violet going on there. Right, stop. So it's still drying, it's doing things, all sorts of things happening there, but that one we won't touch anymore. Just lost one of my lights, so hopefully you still can see this. I'll try and brighten it up in my editing. So I'm just dampening this piece now, and in doing so I have actually dropped some drops of water onto that previous one above, which just happens, doesn't it? You push your brush across your work with your water blob. We've all been there. Always happens. So this time, what am I going to do? Right, I'm going to try and plan this one. So I'm making some more blue. I'm going to make sure it's quite watery, because let's face it, that's how most of us paint. Nice tea consistency. This is the sky, so after all, you don't want it to be too heavy. A little bit more colour. I'm going to be braver and make it slightly thicker. You get bolder and bolder as you paint with colour. I've recently watched a watercolour artist who believes very strongly in going straight in with cream consistency, so none of this watery tea business, and they believe that by not having the watery layer first, you don't need the layers, which ultimately layers can destroy a watercolour, because the more layers you put on, the more you're blocking the white of the paper, the less light can get through. Theoretically, the duller it is. So it's a really good theory. So you might want to try painting with really rich paint from now on, and never going back to using thin paint again with like tea. Now this time around I'm going to lift out some clouds, but I'm going to, off camera, squeeze out this brush with my fingers. Not going to put it in a towel, so I've just squeezed it. So it's not wet, but it's not too dry either. So instead of adding loads of water on, now that's full of paint, wash it out, squeeze it, just doing that over my paper towel, and just lift off some paint with your damp squeezed out brush. It's quite a technique to learn this. If you leave it wet, you're just going to throw water back on. And then we just have some down here. Keep it clean, because every time you push onto there, you're lifting pigment onto it, and the idea of this is you're taking pigment away. So it's still wet, as you can see under there. It's starting to dry here, so now I'm going to try adding a little bit of green to this area here. In fact, I'm just going to clear an area, so I've got a much drier paint, not as dry as the honey. And pull that in. I'm also going to add a tiny bit of burnt sienna to that green, so it's not quite so bright. If I just drop that on across here, the paper is damp. This paint is pushing back into it. I can vary the colour as I go. I can add thicker paint, which we've looked at, so more creamy paint. You'll soon notice that if you have the thick paint, it doesn't run so far. As soon as you add lots of water, it's going to go further and look a lot weaker. So I'm going to put these on. The idea of this is you're using these runbacks, which is essentially what you're creating here, to create a soft edge as if this was distant trees. You can leave some holes, so sky holes, drop some deeper colours in, and as you layer this up, start using sticky paint straight out of the tube. None of this watery paint anymore, because the paper is drying really quick. So you need to switch techniques to add sticky paint. It will still spread a little bit. It's going to spread into some areas and not into others. Give you some fascinating depth. They may be too bright green, but you get the idea. You're using the idea of this bloom to soften all of this away. Be careful, if you go back in with a damp or wet brush, you're going to end up with a bloom that you don't want. So go in with a relatively dry, squeezed out brush if you want to take things off. You can lift out while it's drying. These are a little bit too damp. You can suggest that there's some marks and trees. Who knows what's there? That's probably enough. Now, in order to get that working, I need to stop now because it's running down here, and I wouldn't really ideally have had it running down that way, but if it was a lake, this would now be my reflections. So I'm using the blooms to my advantage. This is almost dry, so I can now go in with my thick sticky paint, which you can just see there. It's much stickier, look at that. Leaving the brush marks behind. So this is my honey layer, and I can just try dry brushing to suggest this is land here. It's very quick. Just getting this on. Not doing a detailed painting, are we? We're just doing a quick sketch. So I've used the blooms down here to suggest distant trees. That works pretty well. Going back to the other one, which is starting to dry, you can start to see where the problems lie. So we've got edges that are hard, blooms that have done their own thing, a strange lump of mixed colour there, blooms that are going down. That's the sticky paint. It's actually way too strong for the sky, isn't it? Unless you did something really strong in the foreground. So it's not very well planned out. It's not as controlled. Here it's starting to dry. The clouds are coming. Here it's starting to dry. The clouds are softer because we lifted them out. We didn't throw water in. But I would like to point out that if you do what I did here and mush water around, sometimes it works. So please don't be put off by blooms and cauliflowers. You can see there where I've pushed in to lift off the clouds with a damp brush, and it's pushed back in to the paint around it and the colour, giving this really quite nice effect. So don't be worried about blooms and cauliflowers and runbacks and anything else people call them. Just try and play with them to see what you can achieve, what you like, what you don't like. If you don't like a bloom, don't do it again. But if you quite like the effect, sometimes they're going to work-ish, sometimes they're not. It's just a matter of trial and error, and being aware that when you're carrying your brush full of paint over your painting and a little surprise drop of water goes down there, you will find it after it's dried and you think, no, where did that come from? And it's the water creating a bloom. Hope you enjoyed that little exercise in creating runbacks and blooms, and then try not to use them, and how you can use them, and they work really well. So have some fun with water, ratios and paint. Take care, and I'll see you all on the next video. Bye for now.